Hi, I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Hello, Moon to Moon. Welcome back. This is episode 198, Living Emergence with experiencer Matt Bull. So I'm so excited to give you this conversation. Matt is my boyfriend, my life partner. We don't know that if we will ever marry. We're just currently not interested. And he's been on Moon to Moon before. We talk about that some. I'll link the episodes. He has participated in several of my classes. He's even been a co-facilitator. A couple of years ago, I did Seeding the Year at the beginning of January and then announced the day after the workshop a procrastinator's bonus. You know, like, why are we always giving gifts to the early birds? How about a gift to the procrastinators? And so I extended seeding the year by offering a bonus meetup at the end of Capricorn, like the very end, for folks to get in on all the seeding the year magic at the end of Capricorn. And Matt is a master procrastinator. This used to be something that used to haunt him and, feel like a huge problem with him, which so many people feel. But he has unshamed that and has a lot to say about unshaming procrastination. So we did an unshaming procrastinators bonus a couple of years ago. That was really fun. Let me tell you a little bit about Matt. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Matt's voice, who maybe haven't heard me talk a lot about him, so I can situate him in the human field, the human ecosystem. Astrologically, Matt is a Sagittarius rising with Neptune on the ascendant. Pisces sun at 29 degrees of Pisces, born on the spring equinox, with Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces and Sag, at 0 Aries. So the sun is coming right into Jupiter the moment of his birth. And he's a very Jupiterian person. And also very mercurial because he has a Gemini moon in the 7th house then. So if you're tracking that, all of his big three are mutable. Very mutable person, doing lots of things at once. He was born into an evangelical Christian family, and that was a huge, 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 huge part of his upbringing. And he was a very, very, very devoted believer. And then he went to college, majored in physics, changed majors to literature. So he has this like scientist philosopher side to him. And his evangelical worldview began to break down across his 20s. And he talks a lot about that in Coincidence as a Practice. So if you have similar stories of shifting homes, belief-wise, or even religious trauma, you may really enjoy that conversation. Matt got into advertising as a copywriter in his 20s. He's done tons and tons and tons of copywriting. He now owns his own agency. And, his job, though, his career is not his whole life. His life is art, and art is his life, whether it's food, designing his home. His sun is exactly on his IC in the fourth house. He approaches everything with deep presence. So that's part of his art. He's a manifesting generator with the cross of the vessel of love. So all of his main gates, if you're into human design, are in the G center. He's a very present person, and he's an absolutely incredible father to 3 children who are very dear to me. And he makes present an art. And in many ways, Matt has taught me how presence is emergence and emergence is presence. I'm very excited to give you this conversation. I'm referring to him as experiencer in the title, as you will see, because Matt has had multiple experiences with what we can call the phenomenon, and it's a huge part of his life. And into his 30s and 40s, he began to become open to the impossible, to the unexplainable, to the weird, to the preposterous. And that, in many ways, was initiated from a contact experience. And it's because of his openness, increasing openness to the impossible, that he was very available to, exploring astrology when he met me, exploring the tarot, and just being a generally open person, being an open person to be mutated, to be changed and shifted through experiencing all that life has to offer, including, what's liminal, marginal, called fake, called wrong, called taboo. He's taught me so much about being open to all experience. So I'm so excited to share Matt's voice with you, and I hope you enjoy our conversation on living emergence. Matt Bull, welcome back to Moon to Moon.
Hi, Britton. Thank you.
This is really exciting. We haven't recorded together in a few years after 2 back-to-back.
Has it been a few years?
I think you were on spring 2022.
Okay.
And then maybe a year later, or even less than a year later, and then not since.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad whatever I'm doing in my life that got me invited back, I'm glad that I rose to the occasion in your estimation.
Yes. Our first episode was titled Coincidence as a Practice, yep. Which is, I think, a pretty genius phrasing, and I think will be influencing our conversation today. And then the second one,
most of my conversations. So.
And then the second one was, but what if it isn't bullshit? Which I think is also part of the conversation today. Oh
gosh, you're right. This is sort of a recap of at least the map we've sketched out for where this conversation might go.
That's a great idea, actually. Would you recap Coincidence as a Practice? If you were to create a synopsis.
Yeah, I just really was, it was about me learning to trust that whether or not these wild coincidences that were happening in my life made sense to me or not, that they were important, maybe just as much for the senselessness as for the sense that I made out of it, and that they were reliable markers for being on a path that provoked and nourished wonder.
Yes. So like coincidence as compass,
Yeah, absolutely.
coincidence as compass.
Yes.
And then, but what if it isn't bullshit? Would you say related?
Yeah, I mean, to me, those are the same thing now, but I'm not sure I have a linguistic thesis for how, but maybe that will sort of
Maybe that's we're
dance
living into
around
it
those
today.
things. Yeah, well, I mean, what both are about, if we'll just dive in, what I've been thinking about, and this is a phrase that came out of one of our many morning coffee conversations, but it's the realization that life is a collaboration between meaning and meaninglessness, and that we tend to, as humans, focus and prioritize the meaning, and like that's where this like purpose economy has come from, and all of these like companies that try to find their purpose to attract younger talent because purpose means so much to people, which is all no shame there. I just think that our culture tends to suppress the purposelessness and the meaninglessness, and I feel like meaning isn't very meaningful without meaninglessness as the kind of contrast. And that a lot of times, the reason this comes up in the context of coincidence and bullshit is that a lot of times it is the like absurd, absolutely preposterously meaningless stuff that happens that is in my life, that is the thing that shocks me out of kind of autopilot and opens my eyes to kind of a broader spiritual ecosystem.
Yes. Well, it's also, it's making me think about the idea of if you're keeping the data of your life all on the table that might be otherwise discarded as meaningless, you actually then, with that data, start to see coincidences and patterns that you would otherwise miss.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy to, if you're so focused on meaning, then you just exactly like you're saying, you discard the stuff that doesn't fit in that narrative of meaning of like, this is what my life is about and this is what I'm here for. And a lot of times that's where the most ridiculous patterns are hiding. For me, like I'm not going to rehash the exact same coincidence stories, but in one of the previous episodes, I talked about this sort of recurring, I call it my haunting by Prometheus. These absolutely bonkers, repeated inbreakings of the story of Prometheus into my life. In ways that I am fully confident there is no explanatory framework that will ever satisfy like the why of that or the meaning of that. But that's the value of it to me now after really being hungry for an explanation in a meeting for a long time. I've come to just decide that the meaning is in the meaninglessness. And I feel like confusion, like deep like world view level confusion every time I've had it in my life is a profound gift. And I when all of my assumptions and certainties get challenged by what the universe is throwing at me, I've learned to just like revel in that feeling of kind of unmooredness that happens now more and more regularly.
Okay, there's a lot here. First, you said this word inbreaking, which to me has a resonance with emergence.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love for you to tease that out a little bit, but also share what emergence is meaning for you?
Yes, living emergently is something I've consciously cultivated since I've known you. I think I was unconsciously cultivating that before I knew you, but it's become a more deliberate way that I look at my life and try to understand reality. And I like the word emergence because in my head it contains that exact dichotomy I was talking about, the meaning and the meaninglessness, the like the skeptic and the magical thinker all at once. That like I picture emergence for me is I picture this sort of larva underground that is coming out into this wider world, but is still always part of the ground that it came from. And I don't see it as an act that finishes. I see it like it's, our lives are emergence from day one to the last day. And this idea that we are, our work is to fuse these opposites and the sky and the earth, the heavens and the body and the spirit, all of these things. It's actually you gave me this book I have in front of me here. I'm just going to read the first paragraph. This is the introduction from Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas, who
Classic.
Yes, this is a great astrological text.
I was showing off when I gave that to you.
You were. It was a good move. It was a successful flex. It was the first time. It was the first time that I had ever entertained. Like, I thought the idea of astrology was sort of like fun, in this sort of like pop play sort of way, and I never had made space for there being sort of a potential academic adjacent. It's not academic, but it is. There is a kind of rigor to the philosophical underpinnings
For sure.
that I thought was really fascinating and that I hadn't really engaged with until this book. But no, he says here, and there's some metaphor here that's a little triggering from my purity culture, religious trauma upbringing, but just let that slide and go with the heart behind it and not the actual specific metaphor he uses. But he says, skepticism is the chastity of the intellect, Santayana declared, and the metaphor is apt. The mind that seeks the deepest intellectual fulfillment does not give itself up to every passing idea. Yet what is sometimes forgotten is the larger purpose of such a virtue. For in the end, chastity is something one preserves not for its own sake, which would be barren, but rather so that one may be fully ready for the moment of surrender to the beloved, the suitor whose aim is true. Whether in knowledge or in love, the capacity to recognize and embrace that moment when it finally arrives, perhaps in quite unexpected circumstances, is essential to the virtue. Only with that discernment and inward opening can the full participatory engagement unfold that brings forth new realities and new knowledge. Without this capacity, at once active and receptive, the long discipline would be fruitless. The carefully cultivated skeptical posture would become finally an empty prison, an armored state of unfulfillment, a permanently confining end in itself rather than the rigorous means to a sublime result. So it's that has always spoken to me because I have a very strong inner skeptic that has always been. It was kind of a thorn in my side in my fundamentalism childhood that I fully believed this reality that I was taught and given, fully believed that every word of the Bible was the inerrant word of God, but at the same time I had always had this really intense skeptical voice that thought all of it was ridiculous, and I thought that voice was sin and the devil inside of me, and one of the interesting parts of leaving that world and embracing that skeptical voice, and then slowly coming back into this world of wonderful bullshit has been, what do I do with that voice? Because it's not. I realize it's not going anywhere, and it's become a part of myself that I value a lot. At the same time that I entertain, every crazy idea that comes my way now could be an important idea for me to play with, even if I'm not going to adopt it fully as my own. And those two voices have really become friends in a way that I find sort of wonderful. And the skeptic kind of gives me, the skeptic, I've earned its trust because it gives me permission to play with all sorts of stuff, because it knows that I'm not going to go chase after every idea that comes my way, but that there are some wild ideas that have landed in kind of undeniable ways that even the skeptic can't speak out against too much. So
Yeah. I'm thinking about here a couple different things. Where should I go first? The first is, I feel like there's something about coincidence and what you've been sharing here regarding emergence that has to do with availability, and like the availability to question, but also the availability to play with.
yeah,
And like holding a third way between being closed and dismissing versus like believing and not questioning.
yes, yeah, and it's almost like neither belief nor rejection are super meaningful to me anymore. Like I was taught that belief was the primary currency we had to offer the divine, that's what it most wanted, the God most wanted our belief. And I find that a very strange idea. Now, the further I get out of it, it was just a given. And it is kind of a given in so much of, especially evangelical culture in this country, but it doesn't really fit with my my own experience of the divine, and it doesn't. It feels like, what could I offer? Like that presence, when I've felt it, is so enormous and so filled with love and safety. It's like, how does my belief offer it anything? I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how to put more language around that, but
There's something here, I think, in the distinction between belief and trust, where like I think the agreement is different.
It is, yeah. They're very similar words, but there's still a kind of a chasm between them and the experiential.
Around choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because I do think in our mystical middle lives, as you phrased it, in the coincidences of practice, what I have so enjoyed with astrology and with my relationship to the unseen realms and my relationship to the philosophy of the phenomenon and the anomalous, is noticing how playing here expands my capacity. It's all about playing with expanding capacity to trust without it crossing into like any kind of like command to believe. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I mean, yeah, there's something really important here. The words are at the periphery right now, but yeah, it's almost like the belief only matters in that it spurs a kind of action, but the action kind of short circuits the need for the belief. If you're willing to just take the step and live as though a thing might be true. I'm trying to think of an example that would be useful for sort of concretizing this.
I think it might also have something to do with a relationship to like guarantees or proof of some kind. Like trust seems to be a game of playing without all the evidence.
Yeah.
And belief like requires you to say that this is the evidence and so we believe. I don't know.
Or to even like put evidence on hold. But I think one of the things, one of the, like, to just use one example of a woo-woo belief is telepathy, which the discussion around that has become so fascinating recently with the Telepathy Tapes podcast, which there's a lot of chatter about, both from the skeptical side and from the quote unquote belief side. But for me, the question of belief in that context is sort of irrelevant because once you've experienced a telepathic exchange, like it's not. Now you have the evidence, and it's not a question of belief anymore. It is an experience. It is a thing that I now have lived, and I don't need to entertain in the belief level anymore. If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So, emergence. Was there anything else you were going to say on the emergence?
Yeah. I feel like I'm just gonna start talking and see where this goes. It's not
amazing,
fully formed thought. There's something about poetry that feels important around that word for me, and in my own opening up to a broader understanding of reality than the version of the world I grew up with. And the version of the world I grew up with was, as I said, very like text centric. We followed in the footsteps of Martin Luther, who, when he rejected the authority of the Pope and the Catholic Church, famously said, "Sola Scriptura," like here I stand, I can do no other. Scripture is the only authority, and that statement has rippled through the history of Western religion ever since. Whether you're a Protestant or not, you're affected by those around you that are fully convinced of the reality of that. And the goal, when I was growing up, of engaging with Scripture was to find the meaning, and to understand the meaning of every verse in that text correctly. And the assumption is there is a right answer to the interpretation of every single book, every single verse, every single lesson, every moral, whether you were talking about, a hero or a villain in the text. And there was a whole lot of certainty around the accepted and prescribed interpretations of this text, of the only text that mattered. And I remember, and as a person of words and language and books, that was how I dealt with all writing and all prose. And I remember when I started to be taught poetry in school, how hard it was for me to engage with a text that didn't have a prescribed meaning and didn't have an agreed upon answer to what it meant and what it was about. And I slowly learned, but I was still very captivated by the poems themselves, and I was very frustrated by other people's interpretations of them. And I in retrospect, I think that slow kind of love affair with poetry that continued through my education, and then me as a writer, and a writer of poems, and a reader of poems, and a consumer of poems, was that that it was a form of language that existed outside of meaning, and its value was in its meaninglessness, and in the meaning that the reader brought to the otherwise meaninglessness of the poem. That it was it was a communion between two subconsciousnesses, and the meaning arrived emergently in collaboration between writer and reader, and that was just so alien and foreign to the biblical exegetical world of hermeneutics that my seminarian family taught me, but it was also kind of a gateway out of that. And I think that's when I talk about emergence, for me, the best metaphor I can think of is a poem that has, there is a text that is absolute, and it also has no inherent meaning apart from what reader and writer make of it in collaboration. And it feels to me like poetry is that meaning and meaninglessness that I was talking about at the heart of emergence. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't know, the poetry to me is like the bullshit that I used to resist, and now that I love. I think of another metaphor would just be like Terence McKenna, who we both love, this psychedelic speaker, philosopher, where I always knew, most of what he talks about is bullshit. It's absolute. It's just blarney. He has the gift of gab, and he just makes shit up, and it's but it's not the truth of what he says that matters, or the value of what he says. It's the freedom of thought,
the freedom
of the expansiveness of ideas, and it's almost like the breaking down of truth is more valuable than the truth. This is getting very, very abstract, but I can feel it better than I can speak
it. Yes. Yeah. And it feels like what this form of what you're describing here is emergence as related here to trust, self-trust, that you're participating in co-creating meaning from the thing, as opposed to trying to do something correctly and perfectly according to an agreed upon template.
Yeah. Yeah, no question.
And that's in many ways where the freedom comes from.
Yeah.
Does that feel true?
Yeah. Well, and it's trust. Who is the object of that trust is an interesting place to go. But I feel like, a related, just to go into one of my oldest fears, was always the fear of madness. The fear, like, what would happen if I lost my mind? How would I be able to distinguish reality from hallucination, from even from like the certainty of kind of the prophetic biblical figures I grew up with, like that being able to discern my own reality from somebody else's, like I don't even know how to. I just know that this was a very old, very deep fear that I've had that has started to relax in the last few years, largely from knowing you and from confronting very, very scary to my inner children, my inner 7-year-old fundamentalist boy ideas, and that like sitting with these ideas and these possibilities has very slowly untangled a lot of that fear to where now I don't like the idea of madness is sort of interesting to me. It's not even like it's like sanity sounds scary. You're like, what does sanity
We're
even
all
mean?
mad here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were just speaking this morning though about like your feeling about astral projection.
Oh, right.
That like this is where you said today, but we don't know emergently what you would say about it in a couple of years, or even next week, because I think that emergently we're relating to trust, and it's like expanding and shifting as we play. And today maybe, do you want to say your fear?
So we were just talking about I have a friend who does who practices remote viewing and took a whole course with a particular like teacher of remote viewing, and he says that guy's method and dogma is you don't astral project. Astral projection is dangerous, and that like if you astral project, you can draw negative entities to you and they can follow you back, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that instead, when you remote view, you just remember that you already are everywhere. So see what you're trying to see because you're already there. One of those fun, preposterous bullshit ideas that is valuable to in this stage of my life to entertain as a possibility, whether or not it's true. But what I was saying this morning was that fear of astral projection lines up with kind of the anti-New Age dogma that I grew up with. That like there is, even meditation was scary because you could encounter. If you meditate, you're emptying your mind and you're creating the possibility that something demonic could come into your consciousness or your space. And so it's just I just realized in conversation that I have had this sort of leftover bias against the idea of astral projection. That's just kind of a childhood festival thing.
Yeah, and I think that playing in these realms, it also is an opportunity to discover the limits of your trust, it's an opportunities to find parts of oneself that are like, we're not going to be entertaining this, and it helps you know more about yourself then.
Yeah. I mean, and there's, again, whether or not the belief even enters it like that, there's, some of it's real. I've seen it. Like, I mean, I've had experiences where it's not even a premonition. It's like I've, I'm remembering something that hasn't happened yet, like that I've seen, this is a thing I've seen, and then I'm not even surprised when it happens. Like, it's not a regular thing, but I've learned to kind of feel the difference in the texture of intuition, and that some of it is just it just arrives as a knowing, and it's not hugely common for me, but when it happens, it's clear. It's clear as hell. Anyway.
Yeah. So what I'd love to do is play a little bit more in how experiencing the strange, the unexplainable, the anomalous, being an experiencer, which can mean many things, but it and sometimes means something very directly, like being an experiencer of what we know as UFOs, aliens, contact. Like how leaning towards these experiences, being available to learning from them, not dismissing them, has opened your life and expanded your experiences of reality and your enjoyment of being a human.
Yeah, that's a big question. And okay, where do I even start? So you called me an experiencer, and that is a term that I've only very recently started to use about myself. It's a term from the UFO, UAP world.
And what is UAP for anyone who hasn't heard that term?
I've heard different military people give a different acronym, but it's unidentified anomalous phenomena or unidentified aerial phenomena.
Aerial, yeah.
But it's what the military started calling UFOs, so that it was harder to do a FOIA request on the word UFO and get meaningful stuff. But now everybody knows the military calls it UAP, so I'm sure they call it something else now in deep inner circles. But yeah, I've had a lot of these experiences now, and very few of them make any sense. It would be great to tell a story of meaning about any of them, but I've kind of let go of that hope. But I think I talked about some of them in an earlier podcast. But the first, well, I don't know about the first. I mean, I had experiences of childhood experiences of waking up, when I was very little and seeing figures outside the window that terrified me. And, when I was 11 or so, I saw Whitley Strieber's Communion book cover with the famous, kind of the first sort of popular representation of a gray alien. And something like viscerally horrified me about that cover. In a way that felt unsafe and familiar at the same time. Interestingly, we just met Whitley Strieber.
We did.
Rice University.
Archives of the Impossible conference.
Yeah. A professor of religion at Rice that has gotten to be a big figure in the academic world for a voice encouraging academics to look at what we've started calling this the phenomena now. It's a broader term than UFOs and aliens, because it doesn't seem like whatever this is really fits those easy categories. That it's weirder than that, probably. But anyway, he brought scientists and social scientists and
military people,
military from around the world,
experiencers, archivists,
including Whitley Strieber, the author of Communion, who Dr. Kreipel also co-wrote a book with called
The Supernatural.
The Super Dash Natural or Super Space Natural.
I think it's supernatural is super and natural as two separate words.
Okay.
And with underlining that
it is still natural.
Like, yes.
It is more natural than natural.
The natural is super.
Yeah, exactly. It's
such a good book, by the way, listeners.
Yeah, it's great. Even
just
we have his sitting on the floor here,
time.
ready for us to quote. Is his current book called How to Think Impossibly, which I've only skimmed, but it seems to like very, very strongly support that my meaning and meaninglessness collaboration thesis. That by rejecting, I think he has what was his quote? His great quote about it's very easy to explain everything that's on the table if you decide what is not on the table.
Yeah, like if you remove from the table like whatever doesn't fit your point of view, you know.
This is his critique of materialism and the academic consensus around materialism that immediately discards anything non-material as worthy of inquiry.
Yeah, and there's just gazillions of voices in this conversation who are, all these people are experiencers, and all of their stories are dismissed from the table. Mm-hmm. So what do we do with all of these stories?
What do we do with the wild congruities between these disparate stories?
And now we have so many scholars noticing how these stories are very, very similar to stories across time, across religions, including Christianity, including like experiences of saints,
angels and demons and fairy lore. Yeah, these are
like if we are opening up to all data, we can see these patterns, and maybe we can also entertain that they are whatever this is maybe not necessarily from another planet.
Yeah, right. Well, and the more whistleblowers, alleged insiders come out with their stories, the more the meta story seems to coalesce around this idea that they aren't from out there. They are from here, from in here, from underground, underwater, parallel, from some sort of world that lives alongside our world that we can't access except in special, weird circumstances.
And we took that class with Dr. Jim Madden through morbid anatomy. That was just like the most fun thing ever. He wrote a book called Unidentified Flying Hyperobject. I'll link all these. But one of the things that he was pointing out is like cognitively, we humans, we're really perception-wise only perceiving like a fraction of what is there, and we see what is relevant to us and ignore what's not relevant. And so when there are these inbreakings, when there are these when the emergence of something unexplainable comes in for a human being, one of the many experiencers, they're only able to perceive it extremely partially, and it doesn't seem to make any sense. Like it's hard, you can't see the whole. So the strangeness is in all the questions it brings up. It's like, what?
For context, Dr. Madden is a professor of philosophy at UPenn. I don't remember which Pennsylvania
maybe
university.
something Pennsylvania or like
A
Baltimore.
very serious philosopher who has not had any, of his own experiences with the phenomena, but read the 2017 New York Times article on the Nimitz encounter in the Pentagon program that studied UFOs, and was just, it was a worldview shattering moment for him, and he decided that he needed to take it seriously as an academic as well, and started to use the UFO as a philosophical construct for kind of.
It's just the most fun.
Yeah.
Intellectually, it is so fun.
Yeah, it is great.
What's more?
Such cool people in that class. Too.
Yeah. Get the book. And he was inspired by another professor book, Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic, which also leans a lot on philosophy. Mm-hmm. And she's a professor of religious studies, right?
Yeah, she is.
At Duke, or where is she?
She's in some North Carolina. Somewhere
UNC?
Maybe, I can't remember.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Took a class of hers in which we met Eric Davis, who is a government whistleblower scientist who just testified in the last congressional UFO.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't linked that.
Yeah, and he was at the same Jeffrey Kripal conference. He was there too.
Okay. Yeah, so Diana Pasulka got into this because she studied religious experiences, particularly in Catholic literature.
Yeah.
And somebody pointed out maybe to her something about the similarities. So she started looking into it, and the archival evidence was like blowing her mind how similar. I didn't take the class, you did, but I've just heard her talk about it many times.
Her class that we took was actually on women and early Christianity. It was sort of a different. It was.
I didn't do it. You did that one on your own.
Yeah, yeah. But one of the kind of, just to connect her and Whitley Strieber in an interesting way. One of you were talking about the parallels between sort of the stories of the saints and their ecstatic experiences and modern UFO lores. One of the wildest similarities is the story of Saint Teresa. And there's these famous paintings of her experience, the agony and the ecstasy of Saint Teresa, where an angel, you look at these paintings and there's angels and different painters interpret them different ways. Sometimes it's Cupid with an arrow, but there's angels with an arrow inserting this arrow into her abdomen. And in her account, she described this arrow going in as this like incredibly horrifyingly painful experience that then turned into ecstasy. Whitley Strieber's account of where famously the anal probe comes from, his story, and it's become a cultural joke, but it's not a joke to him when he tells this story. It's this moment of these beings inserting a needle into his head at the same time that they inserted a needle or a rod or an arrow, in the Saint Teresa telling, into his rectum, and then his entire nervous system being electrified and the pain becoming this like orgasmic experience. And the language is very different, but the overall story is such a mirror of the Saint Teresa story that that's the kind of parallelism that Dr. Pasulka gets into in her work, as does Jacques Vallée.
Yep, Jacques Vallée, Passport to Magonia.
Yeah.
What's the one that you like more?
It is.
I have
It's the first in what he calls his Alien Contact trilogy. It's either Dimensions.
Dimensions, I think.
I think it's Dimensions. Dimensions is just a kind of more readable version of Passport to Magonia, where he really outlines the fairy lore, Celtic connections to modern UFO abduction stories.
Mm-hmm. And he went to Northwestern, I believe. He studied what, physics?
He was part of a group in Northwestern. I don't know that he went.
Maybe he does grad school
I think
there.
his collaborator, maybe J. Allen Hynek, was a professor at Northwestern for a while.
But he's like famous for other
he
things
was he was a French
this.
astronomer and an engineer, and now he's like an AI researcher. He's like a wealthy Silicon Valley guy now that's still, this was always a hobby for him, but he's become kind of the foremost, longest, oldest gray hair expert on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, all of this was diversion.
We just had a little fun.
Yep.
One of the things that I think we can use it to tie back to your stories is the framework we got from Dr. Madden about the Umwelt being like the meaning surrounding world, where each of us, including like a bug on a leaf, can only appreciate like what is in our immediate vicinity that is relevant to us, that we can perceive as relevant. And that's our own little world.
Yeah.
And that there's like a larger world, the Umwelt, that is like basically beyond our regular perception, but emergently we can perceive from it, receive from it, create bridges with it, have encounters with it, and contact, whether you're talking about your ancestors or you're talking about aliens, maybe the same thing. We don't fully know. What I found so fascinating about this is just the picture of the anomalous as part of this larger Umwelt beyond us that we can be available to. So coming back to this idea of being available, being like an attitude or like a way of being that supports emergence, or at least noticing emergence, because when you're available to getting information beyond your Umwelt, pretty cool things can happen. They may not be explainable, or you may not be able to say what they mean, going back to the meaningless polarity. I think playing in there and learning, getting into this with you, because this is where you've, really expanded me, is like your gameliness with wanting to learn more, wanting to be open, wanting to understand, like, what's this beyond thing that has communicated with you? What's it trying to say? That is just, I just think it's such a more expansive way of being that touches every part of my life now.
Thank you. The Umwelt, Uber Umwelt metaphor is I mean, that's what emergence is on if you imagine yourself as a larva underground who gets a glimpse for a second of the above ground world and has not yet metamorphosized enough to actually partake in it, but it would be this incredibly disorienting new reality that you couldn't make sense of, and that you would have to sort of dissociate from that experience to even continue tunneling through the earth looking for food until you're ready to actually partake in this larger reality.
And I think, honestly, for me, the psychedelic experience was really supportive to me understanding more about the how to relate with less fear to what I don't understand. As I was able to see the mechanics of my egoic constructions about reality and recognize them as like having a purpose, but not necessarily being super useful when it comes to understanding the unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
Does that resonate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the unexplainable. I like that word because it's so final. It's like the value in it is in its um, lack of explanation. Yeah. So just to continue the my experience story, I I didn't I I didn't engage with the the unexplainable, the paranormal at all until until a night that I was like looking for a comet, and I forget if it was '06 or '07, but there was a naked eye visible comet. I was very interested in astronomy and had a telescope, and I still have a telescope. And I was looking for this comet out in the grocery store parking lot after dark, and it was too bright to see anything. But I had this, again, I don't like the phrase premonition. It was like hearing myself think out loud that, I mean, it was a phrase, I'm going to see a UFO tonight. I just like heard this phrase in my head in my own voice. And I immediately was like, what was that? That was ridiculous, and dismissed it. I drove home, and I looked more for this comet in my backyard where it was darker. I saw it, super cool. And as soon as I saw it, I saw something moving overhead, and there was this huge, silent, nearly invisible whale's tail over me, like flying steadily without any noise, and it broke my world open. And at first, that breaking my world open was super scary. It brought home. There was when I was a kid and I saw that Whitley Strieber book, I couldn't sleep for like a year and a half. I would lay awake, terrified of the idea of alien abduction. And my parents found out about this after it had been going on a while, and eventually started playing like Amy Grant tapes for me, and to help me go to sleep, and like that did the trick. I still have a special place in my heart for El Shaddai, the Christian pop Amy Grant hit of the 1980s, because it let me sleep. But this, as an adult, seeing this like giant, silent, invisible, almost whale's tail over my head, like sent me right back to that incredibly scared little boy place. And it took I was also immediately like, I couldn't ignore the supernatural anymore at this point, and I became fascinated with reading about things and trying to understand what other people had seen, and reading the Air Force captain that had headed up Project Blue Book that investigated UFOs in the '50s. He wrote a book about, and I was shocked at how much of that, you hear that it all had been explained away, but it hadn't. And there's there's all these stories and the official accounts of like giant cigar-shaped vessels coming out of the ocean and being witnessed by multiple high-ranking military people. Airplane flights that see like flying cigars with portals on them, and multiple military observers on the same flights talking about these wingless fuselages coming and like watching them. I mean, all of these stories that the program that was famous for debunking actually validated. So I became obsessed with this world then, and And eventually it's just sort of my fear around it started to unravel, and I started to just through like no decision of my own, it became a playground rather than a fear space. It just needed to kind of unclench, and the more I approached it playfully, there's a famous, I don't even remember who said this, but there's a famous quote in the UFO researcher world like cautions people from getting into it, because they say, when you start to look at the phenomena looks back at you. And that has absolutely been true. So this was the first sighting and was not the last. I saw orbs in West Texas that approached my car, and I pulled over, and military jets intercepted them and they disappeared. I mean, several more things in the sky, but the things in the sky stories stopped being as interesting as the other stories that seemed to come along with this. I had remembered, this was still when I worked at a big ad agency, and I was in my office, and I was reading some other experiencers' account of their UFO story, and I suddenly had this. When I talked earlier about these moments of like knowing. I just had a knowing that there was something behind me in my office, and I felt this presence, and I felt like a hand on my shoulder, and I heard something say inside my head, "I have something else for you," and the the energy of that moment was like overwhelming. Like I collapsed weeping. Every time for 2 weeks. Every time I got in the car, I would just start weeping at the memory of this moment, and like this confusion over what I was supposed to do with this. And part of the knowing that came with it was that I needed to quit my job and kind of wait for step two. What, like, I was like, quit your job and await further instructions was what it felt like. And I didn't immediately quit my job. What I did instead, I still had this kind of, I think I was still a churchgoer at this point. I was pretty, I was somebody who went to church well into my adulthood. I had little kids. And I decided that what this meant was I was supposed to go to like do some service out in the world, and like I ended up taking a sabbatical, took my family to Africa. I'm very, very conflicted about what meaning to make of this particular period, because there was some very colonial ideas at work in my head here, like trying to help out there. And I really wanted to be cautious about not, partaking in sort of like the white savior complex while we did this volunteer work, but there isn't any escaping it. And I felt like as soon as I got there, I felt like my presence was reinforcing this sort of harmful view that that people in the developing world need, Western people to help them out of their situation. And so as soon as I got there, I quickly retreated from it and just focused on trying to, treating it like a relational experience, and just being observing and learning, and there's a lot of positive stuff that came out of that for me and my kids and my family, but the bigger kind of narrative around what I was doing there is still a confusing one for me in my own self story. As I wouldn't do it again. I think my heart was in the right place, but I think the overall I think there was a mix of harm and help that came out of it. But the whole reason I'm telling the story is because it fits into my next experience was there in Africa. And as soon as we got there, this house we were staying in, like something about it freaked the kids out. Colin was 4 at the time, and the first night there, I woke up in the middle of the night to his screaming at the top of his lungs, and all the kids were gathered in one bunk together because they were scared. And Colin was asleep and screaming. Like, it was the eeriest, strangest thing. We helped calm him down and got him back to sleep. And then not long after that, I woke up, and I don't know how to explain this, but without looking at it, there was a being in my room. And this wasn't like I used to get sleep paralysis all the time. And this wasn't that, because I immediately I checked to see that I could move. I was facing away from this thing, but it was in the corner, and I could see detail. It was like a 5 to 6 foot tall, kind of classic big-eyed alien, but I could see like details of its skin that I'd never imagined before. Like there was a sort of like plucked chicken, like semi-lizard scale kind of texture to it. It was sort of beige, not gray. Like it just was. It was there, and I was very, very afraid. And as I was afraid, I had this like Bible verse from my childhood pop into my head, and it was perfect love casts out fear. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna channel love to this thing, and so I did. I just imagined myself a conduit for divine love that went towards this being in the corner, and I could feel it immediately get enraged, and it started to try to like pull at my heart center. And I don't know if you've ever had these like experiences in the kind of the liminal state. I was fully awake, but it was where like your vision starts to collapse and things go black, and you feel like this pressure, like this vacuum. Like it was that, and I just kept breathing love to this thing, and then suddenly it was just gone, and everything was back to normal, and I was fully awake. So again, in retrospect, I don't know what meaning, quote unquote, to make of this thing. Jacques Vallée talks a lot about how these sort of negative, fearful encounters with the phenomenon are often like hand in hand with these positive, loving ones. And he hypothesizes that they're the same thing, and that they're like all of it's trying to drive us into this place of destabilized openness, and that's one possible explanation for this that makes sense. Or it could be that we live in a haunted world with both sinister and benevolent forces and everything in between. I don't know, but
Destabilized openness. I like that.
Thank you. Feel free to use it.
And what I always wonder is just like how much of the perception of evil or demon is coming from our own biases or like our own worldviews. But at the same time, I'm available to not knowing, and who am I to try to say what's happening for anyone else.
Yeah. No, that's a big question mark for me. Like I get uncomfortable in the disclosure world and in the the experiencer phenomenal world when people talk in ways that mirror kind of the binaries of my childhood and this you know good angels, bad demons. Obviously, the world we experience is a full spectrum of good and evil and neutral and mix, including in my own heart.
Each of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I don't want to be. I want to be available to the possibility that the outside of the physical world, that maybe it is it is a clear binary, and you've chosen one path or the other. But I don't know, that certainly doesn't resonate for me. But I try not to rule any explanatory framework out. The thing that resonates more is just to think of to look at a being that wishes me harm as malevolent because it wishes me harm is no different than a cow seeing me as malevolent, since I depend on it for survival. So that's not necessarily reassuring from a human perspective, but
yeah. And as we've seen, there can be a kind of pendulum swing in experiencer circles of like not wanting to make room for some of these frightening and these frightening encounters that some people have, but then we're dissing the experience that people have had.
Yeah, right. There's it's a really great old debate between John Mack, who was the Harvard psychologist that was one of the first academics to take abduction experiences seriously, and he started to take people's accounts at face value and started to point at consistencies between stories across cultures, and he began to see, even when these stories were incredibly terrifying to the experiencers, he pointed out that in almost all cases they led to these sort of spiritual awakenings, and that these people began to see them in very positive light. And there's a famous debate between him and Bud Hopkins, who was a big deal modern artist that's got works in the MoMA, and who himself became an advocate for experiencers, but who had a very rigidly negative view of these beings, of the non-human intelligence, for the torture that they put people through, and he felt like being an advocate to those stories, to the people whose stories he was sharing, required that he be very clear-minded about the awful experiences that people had when they were taken. And the two of them kind of debated this sort of, like, it became this very good and evil binary in a way that I thought was incredibly fascinating, and still at play in the experiencer world now. There's people come down on one side or the other very, very typically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you would like to share?
Oh, I mean, the most recent story is the one that most clearly touches on the possibility of me losing my mind. So, and you have a hand in kicking this one off. Did you want to?
Wait, which one?
The day your guides told you that my guides wanted me to meditate.
Oh yeah, that is wild. Well, we have a lot of We have a lot of coincidences that feel like inbreakings, but yeah. Yeah, so the story began. I was like brushing my teeth or washing my face. Water was involved, just including all data here. That I just had it wasn't even like a hearing, it was just a full knowing to tell you you needed to meditate.
Which has never happened before.
No.
It's not like we don't.
And this was when we were apart because we live apart when we have our kids. And so I just texted you, hey, take it or leave it. I just got a message from my guides to tell you to meditate today. And then.
Yeah. And this was like so clearly out of the ordinary. Like you don't get messages for me.
No, I mean, I will say that I made contact with what felt like your angels a few years ago, when I was beginning to practice mediumship and just go deeper into my channeling. And you are always a playful guinea pig. So we did that, and it was like extremely moving. The level of love moving through my system, and as I experienced your angels and channeled words for you, that since then I've been able to like hug you and basically invite your angels to move through me. And then you'll spontaneously start weeping.
Yeah, I won't even know that.
I won't tell you that's like happening, and then you just start weeping because you feel it. So we know we've got these things.
Yeah. Well, and in that first channeling experience, like you were telling me that they were telling you that I was made of love, that I was made for love. Like it was all about love.
It was all about love, and then.
And then this was one of those knowings that I had where I just had this fully formed idea where I wasn't even surprised when it played out the way it did, because I knew, I had this idea that I was supposed to take a card from the tarot deck without looking and flip it over, and I knew that it would be the two of cups, the love card, and it was.
And it was.
Yeah, and like there was no surprise in that action whatsoever, because it was like an inevitability.
Yeah. So we have some things.
Yeah, we do this kind of thing, but never like, tell Matt to do this.
It was never like I'm just passing a message on while I'm doing my own thing over here.
So, I tell the rest of the story with some hesitation because it is very self-aggrandizing if it's true. It's a little more comfortable to think of it as delusion, but I sat down to meditate, and immediately I was in the same space that you visited. When I've never called them my angels myself or think of them as angels. I just feel this like
I'm just putting that level on it because I feel like angelic. It doesn't necessarily mean angels as we conceive of angels. It's just a way of like describing a kind of frequency.
Yeah. Well, and you had gifted me readings with some of your medium friends, and multiple of them were like, oh yeah, this is the angelic realm. I know these different realms. This is the angelic realm. And I think that that language made sense to you when you channeled whoever these things are around me. But so I sat down and I just was in that same place you're talking about, of just weeping and being surrounded by love. And I suddenly just had these rare but clear knowings, these ideas came through. And the first day it was they just said, we're coming soon, get ready. And I was like, what? What does get ready mean? How to build a bunker, get ready? Like what? They were like, no, 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 just come back. To make this a habit each day. Just come, get energetically ready, sit with us. It's like, okay. So I came back the next day, and I had this idea, this fully formed idea that they, whoever they are, were a collective consciousness, a race that thought of themselves as world builders, and that that I and many others on the earth are them incarnated here, and that they this is so strange. This is absolutely the weirdest idea that I have ever engaged with, and I like the idea that I'm imagining it, inventing it, or losing my mind. All of that is on the table, and those are very comfortable explanatory frameworks.
As Caroline Casey says, believe nothing, entertain possibilities. We're just entertaining the possibility of world builders. Yes.
And what these ideas were, that they both created the earth long ago, and that the earth was, at the same time as it was its creation, it was also their great love. There was like this romantic kind of like Gnostic, like Christ Sophia thing between them and the earth, and that something happened where there was like a rupture of trust between them, and there was some harm done somehow. And so they retreated and left. And that over time, the earth, just like all beings incarnated here, forget who they are. So the earth has forgotten what it was. And that they said, my job, and it felt like they were speaking to me through these like memories of other meditation experiences, including the being in my office that said, I have something else for you. It really felt like, here's step 2. Okay, step 1 was what you interpreted as quitting your job and going to Africa. I was just getting ready. Step 2 is now you're here to help in this project of repair. And what they asked me to do was to sing the earth back to them. And then there was like a song, and I was just like, I just go back and like find it in meditation and just partake in it. It's just strange. I just do it, and it feels nice, and it's ridiculous.
And did you have a sense if the human world is part of the earth that you're singing to?
Yeah. Well, there's over time these other kind of ideas around it started to come in, and that humanity is it's not about whatever is happening on this cosmic level, that a lot of us feel something is shifting and changing, and there's something both hopeful and scary about it. What I got was that it's not really about humanity. Humanity is a side of is a bridge. It's a conduit between the world, the material world, and this other world. But we will feel the consequences of this shift, however it goes. And that one of the ideas that came was that for the earth to remember, it had to rage first, and that its rage was important, and that it could have, kind of like disastrous implications for what the rage of the earth looks like. And I mean, I think we're already sort of feeling a metaphorical version of that.
Well, and there's an interesting tie back to when I had my mystical dose of mushrooms, a deep psychedelic experience a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I asked them being my guides that were just, very loud and clear in that space. about Prometheus for you. Mm-hmm. And they told me that it was your voice, that it was your heart, and that you, through your lungs, it's like when you make a fire bigger, through your singing, which is like that your lungs activate, you are like you bring your heart into the world, and that is like your Prometheus invitation. So that was years ago now.
Yeah.
And now you're doing this singing to the earth.
Well, and what's interesting too is these ideas came to me before we sort of compared notes on that psychedelic experience. But in that same psychedelic experience, I had this like sudden instinct to like sing to your chakras is what and then these beings, or my imagination or my delusion, were telling me that what I do to the earth is the same as that. Mm-hmm. And that there's almost like this they're sort of like using my love for you as a template for their love for the earth, and that they amplify each other by the ways we practically mirror that. I don't know. It's like there's so much of it is itself a psychedelic, like outside of language, knowing that it's very, very silly sounding to put into words, but it feels important, or it feels, even if it's absolute bullshit,
but what if it's bullshit?
It still feels important, like as
when
bullshit.
You're enjoying the practice.
Yeah,
it feels meaningful.
Yeah.
To you.
Yeah, it's scary to engage with something so silly, so preposterous. Like the fear of being revealed to be a fool is like such a strong cultural barrier.
Yeah.
And so much growth in my life has come from resisting the constraints that fear puts on me.
Yes.
There's so much power in letting myself maybe be an idiot, maybe be a fool, and letting everybody else know that I think even in the disclosure world, so much of the resistance to the idea of the phenomenon comes from the fear of ridicule, and we know that the CIA has weaponized ridicule to keep the lid on.
Yep.
I mean, it came out of the Robertson panel in the 50s after a huge UFO flap in Washington, D.C. that got written about 10,000 news stories that you could still go see around the country, and it scared the government that this was getting traction, and they literally used coordinated ridicule as a way to shut the public up about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about what doesn't get created, what doesn't get spoken, sung, manifested because of the fear of ridicule, it's pretty staggering when you take it to collective levels.
Yeah. Yes. Resisting the urge to ridicule others for experiences that don't fit my own story, and resisting, inoculating myself to the fear of ridicule have been two incredibly important spiritual.
Yeah.
Good,
super
good
humbling.
Good medicine.
It feels very full.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. As I was saying that, the fear of being revealed to be a fool, I was picturing that card. I'm like, what's the fear in this? This is what worlds are born out of. It's the 0 card.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you for coming and talking with me, Matt.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So there you have it. Me and Matt chatting away, living emergence. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope it brought forth a lot of interesting questions, wonderings about things. And thank you for listening. If you're looking for a cool logo, if you are interested in having some branding or copywriting expertise and you have a business and want to invest in that, maybe you want to check out working with Matt. His company is called Kickstand. They're amazing. They did my website. Um, Thank you for tuning in. These last conversations have all been on living emergence. And I wonder, being the student that you are, listener, if you've been feeling into some of the themes that have been bubbling up for you, the invitations, the frequencies that have been coming through for you as you've been listening to each one on the topic of living emergence. I know I have, because I feel like each of these conversations has really been so unique, even though the frame is the same. And that is really exciting for me. So thanks for listening. If you're enjoying Moon to Moon, if you love Moon to Moon and you've never left a rating, a review, I'm inviting you to do that right now. I would really love to get over 100 reviews. I guess it's ratings that I'm at 99. If you could just rate it right now, I would be so happy, because then we get in the hundreds. Yay. Thank you. It helps so much. Okay, so I will see you at the next one. Take care. How's Libra going? I hope you're doing well. Happy October. See you soon.